15th Board of Commissioners meeting to order. And we begin with our opening ceremonies, and I would like to begin with a moment of silence in light of the occurrence in Orlando. So if we could all rise, please. Thank you. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bonnie, please call the roll.
Klaus? Here. Crawford? Here. Johnson? Kropa?
Dr. Johnson will be tardy.
Late. Kropa?
Here.
Lathrop?
Yes.
Wheelock?
Yes, ma'am.
Maxbauer?
Here. Next on the agenda, approval of the minutes. Are there any changes to the minutes of June 1st, 2016? They stand approved. Any changes to the minutes of June 8th, 2016? They stand approved. Next on the agenda is public comment. Bonnie, if you would read the rules, please.
Any person shall be permitted to address a meeting of the Board of Commissioners which is required to be open to the public under the provision of the Michigan Open Meetings Act. Public comment shall be carried out in accordance with the following board rules and procedures. Any person wishing to address the board shall state his or her name and address. No person shall be allowed to speak more than once on the same matter, excluding time needed to answer commissioners' questions, if any. The chairperson shall control the amount of time each person shall be allowed to speak, which shall not exceed 3 minutes. The chairperson may, at his or her discretion, extend the amount of time any person is allowed to speak. Public comment will be solicited during the 2 public comment periods noted in Rule 5.4, Order of Business. However, public comment will generally be received at any time during the meeting regarding a specific topic currently under discussion by the board. Members of the public wishing to comment should raise their hand or pass a note to the clerk in order to be recognized and shall not address the board until called upon by the chairperson.
At this time, would anyone like to make public comment?
I'm Margaret Myron of 3929.
The microphone moves up.
Oh, perfect. I'm Margaret Myron of 3929 Evelyn Street, and I was here on June 1st to fulfill a civics requirement for my high school class. As someone interested in government, I was able to talk to you and to ask if there was any course of action for someone to get more involved in government. And at that time, there wasn't, or weren't aware of any. So Dr. Lathrop, I think, suggested that I come and bring it up. So I'm here, and I don't presume to know how something like this might occur, but I don't think there's anything more teenage than wanting to have control in how things are run. And so I would hope that we might be able to come up with some kind of program for youth, for teenagers in high school or maybe even college, to get involved in their local government. This would allow teenagers like me who are interested in moving forward in government in their career to be exposed on their local level to the truth and inner workings of government, and it would allow County Board of Commissioners and government in general to have a new perspective and to prepare its citizens to be vocal and active members of Grand Traverse County. So I'm asking you to consider, as my Board of County Commissioners, how we might make local government more accessible to teenagers, and I am willing and excited to help brainstorm how something like this might happen. Thank you.
Mr. Menzel.
We don't respond, but I'll respond to you. Something that I had started when I was in elected office as a mayor, I had a shadowing program with the high school. And I would have students come in and shadow myself and Public Works, and then we would have a setting of discussion. And so when we get an HR person in, I think that might be a good program to consider, is a shadowing program connected with the school that would give people a full day of determining over the various positions of the county, we have 28 departments, what they actually do. So just as a thought, that might be one way to meet that. And you're laughing.
I'm laughing because I'm thinking in the back of my mind, you're trying to scare them off.
No, it worked extremely well.
I really-
And it was done a couple times a year, and I think it was in conjunction with the student council coordinated that. But I also think there's a real need, because when I was in school many years ago, we had civics classes. And civics classes, I mean, I had Tom Fennell as a teacher, never forgot him, and I learned who was on the city council and who was on the
I had a
state.
government class as well.
And I think that's why I always was involved and always voted, because I was taught very early that was my responsibility, and I learned that. I think it was an 8th grade class that we took. So, but maybe we can help, open the door and let young people know how important it is to be involved and engaged in the process in early age. So what I'll do when we hire a HR person, which I hope we do soon, that'll be one of the things I'll ask them to work on, is a shadowing day program. And any other ideas, of course, would be receptive as well.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
So I gave you good advice, didn't I?
I know we can't address the public, but if I could just make one statement. Commissioner Howe, who is a friend of mine at the City Commission, they run a Citizen Academy in the city, and I would encourage you to contact him, because they have started a program like this, and it's a very good program. And my first election was kindergarten, and I started a program at our high school here to do internships and shadowing with our local government, and that led to my first attempt at county commissioner at 18 years old. So unfortunately, I know exactly what you're thinking. But I would contact Commissioner Howe. Commissioner Werner is involved as well, and also Marty Colburn, the city manager.
All right. Next, we have approval of the agenda. I do have a couple of changes. One is I want to remove under the consent calendar, I want to remove number 7B7, and that's going to go to 7D. And it will be a resolution to welcome the new tribal chair. And also under new business, we have on your desk, you hear the fans going around the building. We have an air conditioning, heating, cooling problem. So under new business, I'm going to have government repair. Are there any other additions, changes, deletions to the agenda? Seeing none, I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make a motion we approve this agenda with the changes you spoke about.
Is there support?
I'll support.
Moved by Dr. Lathrop, supported by Commissioner Kropa. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. All right. Bonnie, would you read the consent calendar, please?
The purpose of the consent calendar is to expedite business by grouping non-controversial items together to be dealt with by one commission motion without discussion. Any member of the commission, staff, or the public may ask that any item on the consent calendar be removed and placed elsewhere on the agenda for full discussion. Such requests will be automatically respected. If any item is not removed from the consent calendar, the action noted, receive and file or approval, is approved by a single commission action adopting the consent calendar. A, receive and file. Number 1, Northern Nexus minutes of January 28th. Number 2, Northwest Michigan Community Action Agency minutes of April 21st. Number 3, Grand Traverse County Department of Health and Human Services minutes of April 29th. Number 4, Road Commission report. Number 5, Conservation District monthly parkland responsibilities. Number 6, County staff report.
That's right.
Number 7, GFOA 2016 annual conference report submitted by Carol Crawford. B, approvals. Number 1, 2016 Marine Safety Program Grant Agreement. Number 2, support for 2% applications. Number 3, budget adjustments. Number 4, May claims. Number 5, ratification of Teamsters Central Dispatch Agreement for 2016. Number 6, contract extension, DK Security. And number 7 was moved to another area of the agenda.
Dr. Lathrop.
I'd like to remove A7.
A7. That will go to 8A. All right. Commissioner Croppa.
Item B5, ratification of Teamster Central Dispatch Agreement.
That'll go to 8B. All right, and I am going to, because I'm not seeing Sonny raise his hand, and I thought for sure that he would. I'm going to remove.
Let me guess, B2.
There you go.
Would have laid money on it.
Yep.
Me too.
I was counting on you, Sonny.
I would have gotten to there.
I want $2.
You want $2?
You won $2?
All right,
You gonna split it with me?
all right. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar as amended?
I'll make that motion.
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Croppa, supported by Commissioner Crawford. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next, we have special orders of business, Networks Northwest. We have Missy Lane here.
Hello, Commissioners. Thanks for giving me a few minutes on your agenda to present our annual report of Networks Northwest for fiscal year 15. You have this in front of you. There's really a lot of information in here, and we will not have time tonight to go through much of it except on a kind of a cursory level. So I'm really hoping that you will take a few minutes to read through it and when you have additional time. It really is in 3 different sections: talent, business, and community, which are the categories of our different services. So we'll start on page 3 with the talent section. All of these talent development programs are delivered under our subsidiary type organization called Northwest Michigan Works Incorporated, which is a private nonprofit. And I'm sure that most of you are aware by now that Michigan Works is a statewide branded name. So anywhere that you go in Michigan, you will find Michigan Works, a Michigan Works system. And there are 16 Michigan Works agencies in the state. You can see our map of our counties and all of our ways that people can access us as indicated on that map, and the number of visits and visitors. So we had traffic count, so to speak, of almost 42,000 visits in our Michigan Works centers in the 10 counties in that past year. That's a lot of traffic. And that accounts for 14,670 individuals, unduplicated individuals. And you can see the breakdown there by county. Obviously, the participant numbers
Elaine, can I just...
Yes.
I happen to have last year's report.
Oh.
And you did 63,000 last year.
Yes.
And so you're down.
Right, we are down.
And you had 17,000
Right.
in the...
And the difference is the labor market. I guess that's why you're pointing it out. You're asking why?
Right.
Yeah. When the labor market improves, the number of visits decreases because people get jobs more quickly, and the number of people that come in the Michigan Works centers decreases because it's easier for them to find work without help. If we go to page 4, and please do feel free to just interrupt me with any questions that you have as we go along. You can see some basic statistics there. Again, the number of people served and the number of visits, but also the number of businesses served, 1,016, and the number of jobs filled through our assistance, 2,850. We have a number of performance standards in our various programs that are federally and state identified for us, and some of those are highlighted on these 2 pages. Customer satisfaction is one of our key measures. We do that on a regular basis every single year, and you can see what our goal was in the yellow, what the state achieved overall, in the green, and what we achieved in Northwest Michigan Works in the blue, for the job seeker customer at the top and the employer customer beneath that. So you can see that we not only exceeded our performance metric, but also exceeded the state average. And then if you go to page 5, Trade Act I'm not going to say much about because that program is thankfully really dwindling. That's the program for people who lose their jobs due to foreign competition, and we are having less and less of that in our region as the years go on. So that is a good thing, that we had only 73 people in need of our help in that program last year. The PATH program is the program for people who apply for cash assistance from Department of Health and Human Services. And they're required to come to Michigan Works before their cash case is opened and participate in a required set of activities with us to lead them to employment. You can see again our performance goal, the state performance average, and then our performance at 79%. And then same thing under the Workforce Investment Act. That's our primary piece of federal legislation. We have 17 different performance measures that we're judged by, and in each of those cases you can see the goal in green, the state average achievement in blue, and our achievement in yellow in all cases. We met 3 of our goals and exceeded the other 14. And then moving to page 6 is just a little information about special activities that we do to try to connect up companies who are looking for people and people who are looking for jobs. And more we're doing these kinds of special events. Employer of the Day was very popular last year and again this year because companies are having a hard time filling positions. So if they can come in and be highlighted for a whole day at one of our centers, they get to see a lot of people coming in and out, and they get to talk to them right on the spot. So we did 19 of those last year, and I think this year we've already done that many already. Hiring events is another thing. These are job fairs or other kinds of special hiring events. We did 39 of those different events, usually sector-oriented, like IT sector job fair or manufacturing sector job fair, and typically by community. We did a number of different activities for veterans last year to try to attract them to come into our centers, and the primary kind of help they need is figuring out how their skills from the military are transferable into the private sector, because it's a whole different set of job titles, but often a lot of similar skills. So that's the main thing that we help veterans with, but we'll help them with anything else that they need as well. And we do a lot of talent tours, and these are for students, high school students or middle school students, to get them out of the school right into companies. And our biggest focus the past year was in manufacturing. Kids do not understand, and most of their parents don't understand either, the world of manufacturing these days and how high-tech and how clean and sophisticated manufacturing is now. So we take the kids out in conjunction with their schools into these businesses to do tours and talk to people. They like that.
Elaine?
Yes?
When it comes to veterans, how do you coordinate with the county's veteran VA department?
We get information out to them so that they can refer people to us. That's the primary thing. And just try to engage them to whatever extent they are interested or able in coming to special events that we hold for veterans. What we find is that vets are reluctant to come in the door. They're our most reluctant population. So we arrange things like evening get-togethers at social places. And we'll have a few staff people there, and we'll invite them in and put the word out, and then we establish a relationship that way, and then they're more likely to come into one of our centers to participate in activities. So, page 7 summarizes our adult education program, and as you can see from the chart, it's really all over the board in terms of what people need, everywhere from very beginning basic math and reading all the way up to high school completion or GED or English as a second language. And this is probably one of my favorite events each year, the graduation ceremony, because you can see the picture there of all these adults who graduated, and their kids are all out in the audience cheering for them, and that's pretty exciting and heartwarming. And on page 8 is our youth program. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but you can read later about some of the different activities that we do. More and more, our youth services are oriented toward helping high school students learn appropriate workplace behaviors and what employers expect of them. And we're doing that under a program now called Jobs for America's Graduates, which was designed by the private sector and is being nationally implemented now. Then you have a little insert. It got missed in the printing. Page 8A. This shows you the number of people and the occupations in which we paid for people to be trained for specific job credentials. So we paid for the training for 801 people last year, and you can see the breakdown of the different occupational categories and the numbers. And clearly it follows right along with the highest areas of demand in our labor market: healthcare, manufacturing, information technology, and so on. Any questions about Michigan Works before I move ahead?
I just have one thing to ask. I wanted to ask it at the meeting the other night, but I could see there was a great deal of emotion in the room. The Beaver Island School. I know that for many different reasons that has been discontinued. Are we mothballing that so that perhaps if funding or the opportunity presents itself a year, 2 years down the road, we can bring it back?
Yes. We're mothballing it for the 16-17 school year.
That's it?
That's it.
Good.
And during that year, we intend to figure out how we can reopen it under our new federal law, which is making it quite difficult. But we do really hope to be able to reopen it. We serve about 60 students, 60 dropouts a year in that program, and now we're in the process of figuring out an alternative way to serve them, and there is no way that is as good.
I have to tell you, I was at Networks Northwest this week, and it was a very emotional meeting because the Beaver Island Lighthouse School is being discontinued, and I have to tell you, these kids, some of these kids, I swear, they would not have a future if it weren't for that school. And one young man was in the video, and I believed him wholeheartedly. He said, if it weren't for this school, he said, I never thought I could get straight A's. For the first time in my life, I got straight A's. And he was just...
He was compelling.
When you see, and I've seen this, and I'm the only one who sits on the Networks Northwest board, and I see this every year, the success of this school, and there's just got to be a way to sustain it.
I hope so.
But
I hope so.
So I had to ask about whether we're going to mothball that.
Yeah.
I want to say that many years ago, one young person I know went through that program at the Lighthouse, and he's now a high school principal.
I know him, Dan,
Yeah.
and he doesn't mind us saying his name, Dan Oberski. He's assistant principal at Traverse City West.
Brilliant guy he is.
It's amazing.
Yeah.
We have a video of him on our website, and he went out this year and talked to the students to say, look.
Changed his life.
Look at me.
Look at me. I mean,
Yeah.
it changed my life, and I was like you, and here I am.
Yeah.
So, yeah, he's a great spokesperson. He was in the program in the early years.
Yeah.
Before we really got better at what we were doing.
The reason why that school is so successful is the very challenge you have at funding it, which is the geographic isolation.
Exactly.
It
true.
Makes everything, we know we have an island in our county park system. We're aware everything costs more money,
Right.
just to get it out there. But the isolation is why it's a successful school.
And they said, I don't have a cell phone.
No.
It's like...
There's so little chance for any kind of outside interference, and it is really an intensive boot camp-like situation. I went and visited it years ago just out of interest. I was on the
I
island,
didn't know that.
and I made the terrible mistake of driving around the island, which is not as easy as it sounds.
Right.
And I stopped and visited, and they welcomed me in, and it
Oh.
really, I'm sorry to hear about that, although I understand fiscal issues.
Yeah.
But that's why it's so unique and so successful. And
You're right. And the student that Commissioner Maxbauer is referring to said, it's a sanctuary. He used that
Yeah.
word. He said,
Good word for it,
it's
yeah.
quiet here. And it
Yeah.
was kind of like, it's the first time in his life that he had an opportunity to just relax and think about what kind of life he wanted and be away from, all kinds of negative influences. So,
And about the only thing there is to do there is read.
there's literally nothing on that island.
and besides, they have to cook their own meals and do their own laundry and shovel snow and put wood
Yeah.
in the furnace and
It's a
everything else.
wonderful,
So,
wonderful thing.
yeah. Thank you for your comments about it. It's hard for me.
I know it is. I know.
Michigan Works also, we'll move into the business services section of the report, and part of that falls under the Michigan Works banner in that we provide all kinds of human resources and other services to companies, 1,016 of those last year. The one thing I want to point out is retention visits. We do these in partnership with other organizations, and these are just where we come into a company and together and we say, how's it going? What do you need? And we hear things like, things are fine, but I'd like to be more diversified, or I'd like to learn more about suppliers in-state as opposed to out-of-state, or you name it. And then we can hook them up with the organizations that can help them achieve those things. You can see in that chart where these companies were located and what kinds of industry sectors they are with. On page 10 is our Small Business Development Center, and this is a free business counseling program for startups or even stage 2 companies needing or wanting to grow. And the sales growth number, I think, is impressive for 1 year of service, 101 new jobs created, and about $6.5 million of new capital invested in the companies that we worked with.
Elaine,
Yes?
that page right there you're reading from, it's identical to last year's.
The numbers are the
It
same?
was pulled right out of last year's. So it looks like.
I'll have to check on that.
It is.
That could have been a big mistake.
Trust me, if Ron
Sounds
caught
like it was.
it's absolutely correct.
Okay,
Which just puts doubt,
yeah.
I just have doubt of other things that are in here.
Well, I can assure you that the numbers are accurate, but that page might not be.
It's just part of that page.
I'll go check on that.
Okay.
And I will let you know. Our Procurement Technical Assistance Program helps companies get government contracts. We cover the Upper Peninsula with this program as well. I hope this page isn't the same as last year, Ron. Okay. $175.5 million worth of government contracts is a lot of business that's brought in. And it's very difficult for small companies in particular to deal with the bureaucratic process that's involved in getting these government contracts. So they appreciate the technical assistance they get in that process. And the Global Trade Alliance, we cover not only our region, but also the Northeast Michigan and the Upper Peninsula with this program. The number there of 65 businesses is only for our 10 counties, but the export sales results, what the state was not able to break down for us. So the 38.3 million in export sales results is for all of northern Michigan that we serve. Community planning and development. Page 13 mostly covers transportation-related projects, and I know you're mostly familiar with these. You get your road rating report from us every year that we do along with the road commissions. And we have 3 scenic byways that we staff in the region. One of those is in Grand Traverse County, M37 going up the peninsula. Is that M37? Yeah, up the peninsula. Page 14 is mostly dealing with economic development type activities, and we are not a hands-on economic development organization that does business attraction kinds of things. We're more of a macro level economic development support organization to the ones that do the hands-on work. So we're providing a lot of research and data and support and bringing them all together for coordination and helping to bring funds in whenever we can. And then in the community planning area, we do lots of specific projects upon request, sometimes upon request of the state. The first two are that in this chart on page 15. The rest are things, examples of what we do when a county or a township or a village says, could you please help us with fill in the blank? And obviously, last year, Benzie County contracted with us to do a lot of planning work, and these projects really vary from one year to the next. Page 16 is our prisoner reentry program. We had served 235 parolees who came home to our region after serving their sentences in state prison. And calculating for this year, the return on investment of this program was 310%. So that's figuring the recidivism rate and the savings to us as taxpayers due to keeping more people from going back. Since we started this program 10 years ago, it's been a 64% decrease in recidivism. So that's pretty good. And that's higher than the state average, but you would figure that for our region. We don't have hardened criminals in our region. We have a lot of property crimes, we have a lot of drug crimes, we have a lot of sex offender crimes, but not a lot of armed robberies necessarily, or murders, or those kinds of things. So the employment piece is a little bit easier in Northwest Michigan than it is in other parts of the state. Page 18 is our financial summary. We had great audits in fiscal year 15, 100% perfect audits, really. Last night, the board received our audits for the fiscal year 16, and those were also very, very, very good. So we're happy about that's the kind of thing that makes me happy. So I don't know. I guess that means I need to get a life. But you can see our revenue in 15 was about $9.2 million, and you can see that 8.2% of that was spent on administration, and the rest was all spent on direct services. And the last page is just the list of people who were on our board during fiscal year 15. It's a little bit slightly different now, but not too much. And I'll just stop there, see if you have any other questions.
Any additional questions for Elaine? Thank you.
Okay, and I'll get back to you on that one page and get you the correct numbers. Thanks.
Thanks, Elaine.
Nice job.
Next on the agenda is the DEQ Coastal Zone Management Grant for the Boardman Lake Trail update.
We just have, just as a brief introduction, my name is Jean Dorenzi. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Development, and with me is Matt Cowell.
Tonight with the Land Information Access Association, my employer, LIAA or LIA.
And this is an update on the coastal zone management. Grand Traverse County is the fiduciary for a $95,000 grant. $75,000 is for the Boardman Lake Trail, and $20,000 is for the water trail. And Tart cannot be here. Tart is the lead on the Boardman Lake Trail, and Leah is the lead for the water studies. And we just want to give you an update on where we are at with this.
And when you're speaking, if you would try
Yes.
to...
Gotcha.
Thank you. Microphone.
For the $75,000 that is for the Boardman Lake Trail, the match is coming from, it's a dollar-for-dollar match, is from the Brownfield Authority. That is because it's within the Brownfield plan. The match is coming from the authority itself. And just a few slides that this was a quick grant. We received it in October. It was to end in January, was to end. We asked for a 3-month extension, and it has been approved. And the reason we needed an extension was to get more work done, to get the end result of a schematic design that the public embraced. And for the water studies, Matt, if you want to say why the 3-month extension.
Sure. So to do water trail work between October and June is a little tricky because very little of the waterways are warm enough to really get out and do anything in terms of that type of planning. So a 3-month extension that carries us through, my understanding now, through the end of September is perfect. We've got some summer months to work with. We can do a little bit more concerted work in terms of researching additional access points and things like that along the river, doing some of the real due diligence that we're used to performing when you're planning a water trail system.
So in December, the Boardman Lake Trail selected Prandtl Newhoff to be the engineer and the land use to do the schematic design. And TART, again, is the lead for being the public engagement arm for this, the grant. We did not want Grand Traverse County to be doing the legwork. We wanted to have the stakeholders to be the heavy lifting on this. There's a lot of public engagement on this. We have focus groups and an advisory team, and TART is organizing all of the governmental officials too, being Garfield Township, because the trail goes between the city of Traverse City and Garfield Township, as well as Grand Traverse County as the fiduciary as well. This is the overall preferred design for the trail that starts on right around 14th Street and ends at Medali Park. Medali Park is where the scope of the services ends for the Coastal Zone Grant, and you can see that there is a bridge that basically goes over, one bridge that goes over the lake, another bridge that goes over the river, and then it ends at Medali Park. To get to the end, there is there'll be public meetings with Parks and Rec relative to the Medali Park end of the trail and how that'll work. That'll happen in July, and the final design will be presented to the public both at Garfield Township and the city in August. And on the water studies.
Yeah, so on the water trail planning side of the grant, that's $20,000 out of the $95,000 total from the state. The dollar-to-dollar $20,000 match was provided locally by Rotary Charities through consultant fees. They were already working on the Boardman River Prosperity Plan and doing some work that tied directly into the water trail planning effort, so we levered that as the match for the state grant. And I want to thank the county for serving as fiduciary on this grant, because it really allowed us to put two complementary projects under the same umbrella and into the state. It made a lot more sense the way the application came together to the state, and I think strengthened the application and helped us successfully pull this grant back into our community. So much appreciated in that regard. Are all of you familiar with water trails generally? It's a route, usually a recreational route along a body of water. Could be coastline, could be down a river, like it is in this case. That's just a little bit more organized than a normal paddling trip, right? You understand where your access points are. You strategically plan certain types of access points, whether they might be universally accessible. Those investments are planned, targeted. Usually there's a written plan behind a water trail. Since they tend to run through multiple jurisdictions, it's a really excellent opportunity, and one of Leah's mission points brought us to working with water trails is that generally those trails flow through lots of different jurisdictions and require some cooperation, collaboration amongst those jurisdictions in a sandbox that's very safe. A water trail is not a lot of heavy lifting in terms of collaborative agreements and formal legal documentation and things like that. But it's very important that once you do have a water trail, there is some organizational spine, heft, planning, phasing to it, so that those jurisdictions can work in a coordinated manner. And if one jurisdiction has a couple launches that need to be improved, maybe those are prioritized over launches in a different jurisdiction, but it's done in a coordinated manner, it's rolled out in a coordinated manner, one that best serves paddlers and best serves the communities through which the water trail passes. Water trails really play to the strengths of Michigan as a freshwater state. 60 some odd navigable rivers, more than 3,000 miles of navigable Great Lakes coastline. It's a perfect place for paddlers, and it's really a world-class destination as long as the state is prepared to get the word out and provide really excellent information to paddlers, because weather's involved and lots of safety issues are involved, and you want really good information when you're out paddling shoreline or down a river. And the state's really getting on board with this, really getting, there's been a lot of push now at the statewide level that came up from the local level, bubbled up locally and organically, and now it's coming back down at the state level in support in terms of grant funding, prioritization. Water trails are one of the tenets of the state's new 30-year freshwater management plan, so it's really it's an idea that's really taking root in Michigan in a big way, and it makes a lot of sense that the Boardman and that water resource here locally is catching up to that. The purpose of the water trail effort is to complement the land-based Boardman Lake Trail, so make sure that water trail paddlers are accessing the land trail and vice versa. It's also helping us to develop a plan of exactly where the trail might run. You know, there are some areas along the Boardman that are essentially under construction with dam removals, all kinds of other things going on. So we want to be able to plan out which segments of river, which areas might be now and in the future the right spots to be marketing, advertising, posting signage, doing those sorts of things to market and promote and make a water trail very usable. Where other access points or other amenities might be needed along the river and lake, and how just how best to communicate this out to the paddling community and connect those resources with the communities through which the trail runs. The current study area is from generally the Forks area. There's a state forest campground called the Forks near the intersection of Brown Bridge and Supply Roads. So it's basically that downstream all the way to the mouth where it dumps out into West Grand Traverse Bay. The research that the project team develops, as well as the development plan, will all be published as a water trail master plan for that stretch of the Boardman coming up here in the late summer. The planning team has already had 2 steering committee meetings and has been having a lot of individual meetings with stakeholders on the river, whether it be business people, local jurisdictions, paddling enthusiasts, etc. There's also going to be at least one large public gathering held later in the summer to collect public input, so stay tuned for that. It's probably late July, the way it's looking at now for that. As we mentioned earlier, the project period ends in September, so all of this will be wrapped up by then. And based on the effort so far, I do want to mention to you all that Medali Park has been identified as kind of a focal point of what we're calling the urban portion of the water trail. So there's some very natural and nature-oriented experiences on that stretch of river. There's also some more urban experiences as you get closer to downtown Traverse City. So Medali Park, the project team would like to identify it as a potential water trail, an important water trail facility. If identified in the water trail master plan as such, it makes it easier for future grant requests. When we identify it, codify it as that, it prioritizes it, particularly for some of these state funding sources, and we'd be able to look at making improvements to the county's Medali Park in terms of universal access launches or additional facilities as identified in this public process. As part of that, the project team will be back in front of you in the next month or two seeking a formal resolution of support of the water trail and that effort going forward. There's no financial ties or responsibilities to that for the county. It's simply a resolution of support for the concept of the water trail and for pursuing development of those amenities down the road through grants and other sources.
Any questions, discussion? I do have a question. How are we planning trail maintenance, or are we?
I know a little bit about that, at least enough to be dangerous, just from attending a few meetings. This stretch, the new stretch of the Boardman Lake Trail, the terrestrial trail, is the first time that, as part of that planning, a capital improvement plan is being developed from the get-go in terms of how much money is required to maintain that stretch of trail, where sources of funding from that might come from, et cetera. So it's an ongoing conversation in our community with all the trails that have been built out. One of the other hats I wear is working with the local recreational authority We've been approached on more than one occasion at the Recreational Authority to think about ways that jurisdictions might collaborate around terrestrial trail improvement and terrestrial trail maintenance. There's all kinds of models, cooperative models like a Recreational Authority that might help to get that done. But point well taken, and I just know through osmosis that this particular stretch of the Boardman Lake Trail, the plan is to, from the outset, before it's funded or built, that there's also a maintenance plan associated with that.
And this is just me personally, I would like to see that whomever builds a trail, whether it be TART, Garfield, the city, the county, I think it's important that in the, you can build it, but it doesn't do, doesn't do any good if you can't maintain it. So that's just me.
As part of TART's responsibilities as the lead for this part of the grant is to figure out with the city and with the township the maintenance component.
Okay. Anybody else? Ron?
Yeah. Gene, the 75,000 brownfield money,
Correct.
where's that come from? Doesn't the brownfield money get reimbursed typically from putting a structure up and taking property taxes from that development and pay it back?
Correct.
What happens with this?
This is part of the Boardman Lake Brownfield Plan. The Boardman Lake Brownfield Plan is part of the, do you know where Cone Drive is? And it's from Cone Drive to 14th Street, and then it has carved out the trail, because the trail was part of the overall infrastructure for that plan. So the TIF that is collected by the private investment that has been invested there is part of the trail development. Even though it goes outside of the city limits, the state has said you can use that because of the economic impact for this area because of what Trails brings.
So is that like are going to be developed in time, or is it just the way that it sits right now, the Cone Drive?
The development over there, and I can give you a map of the project area, it's almost built out.
Is that right at the end of 14th Street? Is that
14th, yes, where the new trail has started, the single residential and condominiums that are over there.
Okay.
Commissioner Wheelock.
Part of this original plan also included the railroad Y. Where are we at with that? The Y is part of the street, not part of the trail, and we've, along the way, originally it was one project, and we kind of split the trail away from this Boardman Avenue or whatever we're going to call it this week. Where are we with the railroad Y?
Well, it's separate from this, but it's the same project.
It's the same project.
Plan, brownfield plan. There's another project that's going on, Boardman West, the public infrastructure for a street that is being under study from LSL Consultants. And at the same time, we're working with AECom to determine if the Railroad Y will be located on Cass Street or at another location. So by the time that we have the trail and what will happen with the other public infrastructure component, we'll have the answer to the why. So the city can there say, what is your priority for funding for public infrastructure? Is it the trail? Is it the street? And is it the relocation of the Y?
Just for the board's
at the end of the year.
And the public's benefit, the property, the reason I ask about the Y, Grand Traverse County through the Land Bank Authority and the Brownfield Authority purchased property on Cass Road for the relocation of the Y a number of years ago. And then along the way, it's just kind of got pushed on the back burner. But the fact is, we still own that property, and we're holding that property.
Is something is something going to be done with that?
Well, that's the question.
I mean, how long are we going to hold it?
Well, we've had it, what now, 6, 7 years?
6 years. That this is part of the overall, when AECom is looking at this, they're going to determine if the Y would be located on the property or at another location. And if it's at another location, then the city of Traverse City pays back the Brownfield Authority for the property purchase.
Point is, 6-7 years ago,
But I'm just going to say, at what point...
We had to purchase this property.
At what point are we going to...
Answers will be identified during the trail and through the other study. So hopefully by August and September, it'll be brought before the city commission for a
Excellent.
decision.
Excellent.
It's just, this is a commitment the county made on
Glacial
behalf of
speed
the
of
city
government
and
once
this
again.
project a number of years ago, and we've been sitting on this piece of property. So, if it's not going to be utilized, do we market the property? What do we do? The city made us whole, kind of, in the beginning.
At some point, a decision needs to be made. Either you move forward or you decide not, or you pull the plug. At some point, you make a decision. It's been 7 years. Okay. Anyone else? All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Next on the agenda, the Grand Traverse County Treasurer's Annual Report, Restricted Funds. Ms. Sheppy.
Heidi Sheppy, County Treasurer. I have two things before you. The first thing is my annual report. I'm not going to read it verbatim, but I'm just going to highlight just a few things. On page 3, receipting the money by the treasurer. Just want to note that's the amount of cash that comes in and out of our office throughout the year. And June is our lowest cash month, so right now we're low. The tax bills are going to go out next month, so July, August, and looking at September there, you'll see is our biggest influx of cash. So that's when we'll start having the funds that we'll have to worry about insuring and collateralizing. If you look on page 4, you'll see the breakdown of what we have with these funds. This is where the funds were at December 31st. So that's when our cash was at a higher rate. Most of our funds I try to keep obviously insured and collateralized. So I have them in 55 different bank accounts at the $250,000 portion. Security funds is obviously most important. Public Act 20 doesn't allow me to invest in stocks or bonds, which I think is a good thing. So we just try and keep it safe until we need it. On page 5, that's just a summary of the revenue that our office brings in, along with the expenditures that we cost the county. We have personnel, obviously, is our biggest cost, but some of our employees are eligible expenditures out of our foreclosure fund, so they don't cost the general fund any money. So we try and put as much in there as we can to help what we can. We did take over passports this year in August, and it's gone quite well. We actually are pretty happy to be on the positive side with the customers instead of always collecting delinquent taxes. So, so it's good to see the public in a positive setting. On
What is the PRE, denial interest, PRE?
Primary residency exemption, that is a separate fund that we do. We actually, for individuals who have a second home, if you live in Grand Traverse County and is your primary residence, you don't have to pay the 18 mills of the school operating tax. But if it's a second home, then you do have to pay the TCAPs. But not everybody is either aware of the law or things will change, a family member will pass, and they just pay the taxes like they always did. So we have, Equalization has an audit that they do, and then we do the billings and the collections through a separate fund that we've set up for the PRE. So that's what the PRE fund. Page 6, delinquent tax. This kind of just shows you the trend. My delinquent tax purchases are on the downward slope, which is a good state of the economy, which means people are paying their taxes at the township and they're paying them on time and not having fees, which is good for the economy. My delinquent tax fund, not so good, because the less we buy, the less fees we have, the less I have to appropriate to the general fund. So the downward slope is good for the economy, but for the delinquent tax fund, just on the next page, you'll notice my appropriations are declining. So page 7 just kind of shows, it's a visual representation of our actual collections. But one thing to notice, even though the purchase price is declining, the number of parcels purchased isn't declining as much. So we're actually generating more receipts and more people coming in on payment plans. We've been trying to get people on payment plans so their fees aren't as extensive, but that just it saves the customer money, saves the taxpayer money, but it's a bit more receipting for us. So we just like to track that trend so we know. Another thing I'll highlight, obviously, is credit cards. February, March, and April are our biggest, and obviously, if foreclosure is in February, so it's either put your taxes on your credit card or lose your home. A lot of people will do that in lieu of waiting for their tax return. So what we've done is we've worked with the townships to, the board has approved the senior assistance tax abatement, so they get the exemption of deferral of all fees and interest. So we're working with the townships to get that out to people, senior citizens, to let them know if they can't pay their taxes on time, if they fill out the deferral form, they don't have to put it on their credit card. They can wait for their tax return to come for their property tax abatement and not have to pay those fees or be in fear of foreclosure.
Eddie, what was the final number of properties foreclosed on this year?
17. Yeah.
And the
Yep.
Land Bank Authority will decide probably next week
Next
when we
week.
meet as to whether or not the Land Bank Authority will hold those properties or whether they'll forward them straight to auction.
Yeah.
Any or all.
Majority are vacant land. We have, I want to say, 3 mobile homes that were foreclosed. I'm certain 2 are vacant. 1, I'm not positive, may have somebody in it. There's one, a home, that the taxpayer has contacted the land bank to try and work with the land bank on the on their program. So.
There's an irony to waiting for your tax return to pay your delinquent tax.
Well, you can claim your property taxes for your property exemption for the state. So yeah, you wait for the state to give you the money to pay
it back to the government.
So, but for the senior citizens who have a limited, obviously they are waiting for their Social Security. It's helpful for them. So, number 8 is just a summary of breakdown of that $5.1 million that we purchased or that the delinquent tax fund paid out, of where the funds are going. Obviously, the city is the biggest, Peninsula and Garfield in second and third. And then on page 9, dog and kennel license. Dog license revenue, I kind of have 3 years there. We sell 1, 2, and 3-year licenses, but the majority of people buy a 3-year to correspond with their rabies. So the revenue usually stays pretty consistent. Though you're going to buy a 3-year, and then the next year the people whose 3-year has expired. So usually this stays pretty consistent. One thing to highlight, the tax certifications. Our fee was changed by the state last year, and we get, instead of charging $1, we charge $5 per tax certification. So you'll notice our certification revenue in 2014, we made $3,154. In 2015, with just a half of a year increase, it jumped to $11,000. I just checked my records. As of today, we're at $8,000 for tax certification. So it was something positive that the state did, increasing the fees. That's helping the county out. And that is my annual report. If anybody has any questions, or I can go on to the restricted funds. The restricted funds is something that I have to do every year in June, as required by statute. The foreclosure fund is the fund that we utilize to pay the delinquent taxes, and then the administration fee goes into the separate fund. And we have an excess of $95,742.98. Historically, we've transferred 75% of that to the Housing Trust Fund. That agreement expired last year. So this year, we are proposing of putting it towards the deficit to work with MERS. So it will be rolling into the general fund. And this is just a summary of the activity as required for statute.
Any questions for Heidi?
She answered them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. All right. Next on the agenda is, under special order of business, is a welcome resolution, and I did pull that from the consent calendar because it is a resolution, and I'm going to read it. The Grand Traverse County Board of Commissioners congratulates and extends a warm welcome to newly elected Board Chair Thurlow Samuel McClellan Sr. to the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians. Your leadership and years of experience will provide the historical perspective to the decision-making process while bringing institutional knowledge to aid in the future direction of the tribe. We are confident that your influence in tribal matters will continue to shape the overall value that the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians brings to the surrounding counties in northern Michigan. And I would move to approve the resolution as read to welcome our new tribal chairman. Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Dr. Johnson. Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Would you pass that back down to Bonnie, please? All right. Next, items removed from the consent calendar. The GFOA 2016 Annual Conference Report, that would be Dr. Lathrop. You removed that.
Yes, I read that report, and it was great, Carol.
Oh, thank you.
And I want to thank you for, I think it's the first time I've seen a report given by a commissioner coming back from a conference. I do want to borrow your book.
Okay.
And I love the things you said in it, and so I
Thank
just want
you.
to congratulate you. It was well done.
Thank you. I figured since I was the only commissioner to go, that
Yeah.
everybody
Well
else needed to know what happened, so.
Yeah, I encourage the public to read that if they want to. It's got some great ideas in it.
Thank you very much.
Would that be a motion to receive and file the report?
Yes.
Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Wheelock. Discussion. This really doesn't have a particular bearing on the GFO, on the GFOA, as I call it, GFOA report. But, this is a wonderful practice that if department heads go to a conference, they write a report so everybody can read it and see what they learned, the benefit. But just a thought. All right. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. All right. Next on the agenda is ratification of Teamsters Central Dispatch Agreement for 2016.
This one's mine.
Yes, it is.
First of all, I was happy to see that 6 months later, we were able to settle this contract, so thank you. I have some questions on it just for clarification from the discussion. Trying to read it, it's small, so bear with me here. It says, in accordance with Public Act 54, since the expiration, the employees in this bargaining unit have paid the increased costs for health care. When you say that, are we talking about the 10% from the resolution last November?
It's 20%.
It's the difference between the actual cost of the healthcare increase versus what they were paying last year.
What have they been paying all year for 6 months? What have the employees been paying that are in this union?
It would have been the difference, the actual cost of the increase in healthcare above the 6%.
Okay.
So they're going back down now.
So they were paying 10% along with the non-contract people that all changed to 10%?
This puts them in alignment with the 20% that we're going to be doing in January 1.
But they've been paying 10%, and then it says here, they will pay 6% for healthcare costs through expiration, meaning until December 31st, because this was only agreed to through the end of this year. So it's really only a 6-month contract. So they're going back to the 6%, but nothing is retroactive in the overage that they paid for these 6 months?
No.
Okay. There was no raise, so we don't have retroactive issues there.
That's correct.
And then because now this is only a contract through the end of the year, they will go into, they will on January 1st of 2017, they're part of the across-the-board 20%. Okay.
Right.
So they went from 6 to 10, back to 6, and then up to 20. Okay. I was just trying to figure that out. But then it says, if they meet the requirement that the employer, us, pay no more than 80% of the total annual cost of the medical benefit plan's election. How is that possible if they only contributed 10% for 6 months and 6% for 6 months?
That is just standard language that was added under the advisement of the labor attorney. That'll be included in any future agreements going forward.
Okay, because it appeared when you read that as if they will have to then make up the difference at the end of the year. Okay.
No, they don't.
That's what I was concerned about when I read this, and then it has the provision that the county may offer a lower cost health care. I understood that. I just wondered if we were dealing with retroactive reimbursement or retroactive billing. Okay.
No.
Okay, that was my question. I'm glad to see it resolved. I will make a motion to ratify the tentative agreement with the Teamsters Central Dispatch Unit.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Coropa, supported by Commissioner Wheelock. Discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. All right.
Madam Chair, the only other thing I would add is we have a loser pays an arbitration clause, so.
And they were the loser, am I correct?
No.
No.
Yeah, no.
No.
In the future,
In the
we're putting
future.
loser pays an arbitration.
That was
so-
not in the current contract.
Right, so
Okay.
we're putting
That was
those in
another question I
contracts.
had. I'm
Yeah.
glad you said that. I understand that's in future contracts, but I think I misunderstood that it was in that current contract.
Right.
All right. Moving on. Departmental items.
You
Airport.
pulled number 2,
One more.
I'm sorry, what?
2%.
2% money.
You pulled that.
Oh, yes, I did. Yes, I did.
I wasn't going to let you get by with that.
Oh, well, I was trying. What the heck? I did pull this because you have a resolution on your desk. Our Parks Director is still in the throes of writing grant requests, and as is our administration. So how do you want me to handle this? Just because our deadline is at the end of this month, correct?
Correct.
Yeah.
How would you like me to handle it? Just pass the resolution that,
Yes, and I believe the resolution provides approval for any additional grants that are submitted by the county, by county departments, provides approval from the board.
all right, well, I'm going to move to pass the resolution that's on your desk because administration is telling me I need to pass this resolution.
Yeah, if we want to get the grants.
Is there support?
Support.
Supported by Commissioner Crawford. Commissioner Coropa.
Well, you knew it wouldn't come past me without asking. The Boardman Dam removal, $100,000. I'm assuming this is an application for our county's portion of a match towards some of the expenses that we're going to incur.
Yes.
That's correct.
So I want to thank you for moving forward with Grand Traverse County doing their own fundraising for their match. It's clear that we're not going to receive funds in other places, and this was a very welcome thing to see.
And I appreciate it very much.
And I'm happy to go speak with the board, the tribal board.
I'm willing to go with you. And Commissioner Wheelock's got his finger, he's just waiting.
That's right.
You know, I've spoke to this issue so many times I don't even know where to start. The bottom line is the consent agreement between the Governor John Engler and the Grand Traverse Band of Ottawa and Chippewa Indians has very specific criteria by which that 2% money has to be dispersed. The Grand Traverse Band has never one time complied with that consent agreement. I've heard all kinds of discussion over the years about how the state violated the consent agreement when they allowed the casinos to be opened in the city of Detroit. But the fact is, the documentation, without question, the Grand Traverse Band 2% money is not being allocated as per the consent agreement that was signed between Governor Engler and the Grand Traverse Band. Therefore, on probably 20 different occasions, maybe more than that, because it comes out twice a year, I have opposed these applications the way they come.
Actually,
because-
Commissioner Wheelock, I found one time in the minutes
Did I screw it up?
Did we sneak
that,
it by you?
yeah, that you
Yeah.
actually did approve it.
Well, I apologize for my failure to vote no that
inconsistency.
time, because it is simply, this 2% money and the distribution of this money is very cut and dried how it's supposed to be done. Grand Traverse Band has never one time complied with those requirements, and therefore I oppose this process.
All righty. Any additional discussion? Roll call, Bonnie, please.
Crawford,
Yes?
Johnson,
Yes.
Cropa,
Yes.
Lathrop,
Yes.
Wheelock,
No.
Klaus,
Yes.
Max Bauer.
Yes. Motion carries.
Madam
Ne-
Chair,
Yes.
if any of the commissioners are going to contact the tribe, I'd appreciate it doing it after next Thursday, because we're giving the resolution to them on Thursday and welcoming them and starting out a good collaboration. So if you're going to talk to them, let us give them a positive thing first.
We're only going to let commissioner, we only want commissioners who, yes.
We're not going to send Commissioner.
No, we're not going to send Commissioner Wheelock. Let's
Okay.
put it that way.
To
We're
go
not
to the
going to
band
send
events.
Commissioner Wheelock. All right.
You're banned.
Well,
It's a fact.
they've tried that before.
Well,
I'm
you
pretty
know.
sure
We'll-
most of the tribal council knows my opinion
we'll,
about
Really?
this also.
Commissioner, we'll relay your concerns about that to them, though, in our meeting
Well,
next
and the
Thursday.
fact is the consent agreement was due to be renewed in, 2012, 2013, and we still haven't done that either.
Well, we can mention that when we talk to them.
All-
Is it just the Grand Traverse Band, or are you talking about all the?
Oh, no, it's just Grand Traverse
Grand
Band.
Traverse Band.
Just the Grand Traverse? Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, I do, not that it's relevant, but the fact is, I have over the years done business with Shepherd Fire Department that receives most of their funding from the casino with the tribe in Mount Pleasant. I've done business with people that receive funding from the band in Saginaw. They're the whole separate process.
It is,
You know,
it is. Elsewhere in the state, it is a separate process.
Every other place except Grand Traverse Band has an independent committee that reviews all applications and makes the recommendation of where that money, or makes the disbursement of that money. Grand Traverse Band still holds sole control over how they distribute their money. And it's just not the way it's supposed to be done.
All righty. Moving on. Departmental items. The airport, agreement for new Costco at Cherry Capital Airport. Who would like to take that?
Probably.
I think
And I see
Carrie?
Carrie.
Carrie.
Chuck, either one.
Come on down.
Carrie and Chuck's going to handle this.
All right.
Good evening, Carrie Zeitz with Smith Hoey Rice and Rogie Airport Attorney.
And Chuck Judson with Smith Hoey Rice and Rogie, also representing the Northwestern Regional Airport Commission, Cherry Capital Airport. Carrie's going to take primarily the lead relative to the Costco project, as we have internally divided this project up working with the airport. Carrie has handled the majority of the discussions with Costco in collaboration with Airport Director Kevin Klein and myself, and then our Airport Commission. And I've handled most of the communication with the FAA, and also have a historical basis of understanding how the Airport Commission was formed and how the counties have been supportive of it. So if you had any questions that relate to how the commission was formed, I'll be glad to handle that as well. But I think most of your information will probably come from Carrie.
First of all, I would like to start off by expressing Kevin Klein, the airport executive director's apologies for not being here this evening. He's off on a trip trying to get us better service, airline service for the Cherry Capital Airport. So he's not on vacation. He's working hard for all of us. The request before the board this evening is for the adoption of the resolution that's included in your packet to approve the consent and non-disturbance agreement with Costco. The reason the the consent and non-disturbance agreement is necessary is because, as you know, effective in 1999, there's an operating agreement and a lease agreement between the Airport Commission and the two counties that appoint members to the board, Leelanau County and Grand Traverse County. Those two documents or those two agreements expire 2040. The Costco lease is initially for a 20-year period with 8 5-year extensions, so bringing the term of the Costco lease out to 60 years, which is obviously beyond the 2040 deadline for the lease agreement and the operating agreement between the commission and the counties. Costco has requested that we obtain the consent and non-disturbance agreement from the counties in order to assure them that if for some reason in 2040, if the Airport Commission and the counties do not continue the current arrangement, that Costco will be allowed to continue on the site pursuant to the lease that we've negotiated with Costco. That's number one purpose, and then the second reason for the resolution is to authorize the restrictive easement and operating agreement, which is currently being negotiated between the Costco and the Airport Commission. And as a result, of course, the resolution indicates that your approval of that agreement would be subject to county administrator approval as well as civil council review. And the restrictive operating agreement is intended to do three things. It's to basically provide reciprocal easements between Costco and the airport over the airport property and Costco's property to allow ingress and egress by both parties on the property. Number two, to basically address the maintenance, who's going to be responsible for maintenance of the access drive that's going to go into the 60-acre parcel. And then the third is the restrictive covenant, which limits the airport, not the counties, not either of the counties, from renting out to one of the competitors of Costco. So the airport can't rent out to Sam's Club, for example. And it's important to note that that's really just very common for large corporations. They don't want their competitor right next to them provision. It is not a provision that would limit the ability of the airport or the counties in the future, if for some reason Costco was no longer on the site, to be able to lease that property out to one of the competitors. It's only while the lease is in place, and it terminates once the lease is done. If you have any questions with respect to the consent and non-disturbance agreement or the lease, I'd be happy to address them.
Madam Chairman, I would move to approve the consent and non-disturbance agreement between the Regional Airport Commission and Grand Traverse County and Costco.
Is there support?
Support.
Moved by Commissioner Wheelock, supported by Commissioner Crawford. Discussion. Dr. Johnson?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, both of you, for all the work you've done on this. Behind the scenes, they've been working diligently on getting this here. Kevin Klein's been instrumental too. It's just a wonderful group that's together. Since I'm on that commission there, I can see it firsthand how well everything works and how well everything's thought out. So this wasn't just a whim or anything like that came about. These are actually good paying jobs. It's a wonderful location for something like that. It'll hopefully bring some other businesses in there, so.
I'm sure that none of us probably, if we were thinking about where we had commercial property that we could develop in our community, would have ever thought about the property adjacent to the entrance to the airport. There's a million places that I would have thought of for commercial development in our area long before I'd ever dreamed about this one. So, I give Kevin and his group a lot of credit for, coming up with this idea, and it's good use for the property. I think it'll be good for the developer and for Costco, and it'll be good for our community, and it brings us some revenue.
I do have a question.
Sure.
Is Costco just paying, and first of all, I want the public to understand that Cherry Capital Airport is a regional airport. If the airport was not self-sustaining in revenues, guess who gets to pay the bill to keep the airport open? It's the taxpayer. So I truly, truly appreciate this agreement and what it means to the citizens in the region, because we are not going to have to pay an airport tax like so many other areas have to pay. That having been said, the lease, are they paying any property tax on top of the lease, or are they just paying a lease payment?
They will ultimately be paying a property tax, just like any, currently the airport property, or most of it is off the tax rolls because it's a public entity. But once they put their building on leased land, they will be taxed along with everyone else, yep.
I think this is a wonderful thing for the community. Dr. Johnson?
Yeah, I also want to add, this isn't uncommon across the country. There's a lot of airports that have this kind of development on their property that's allowed. So it is a good use of property that otherwise, you wouldn't think of using for anything. So.
All right.
It's my congratulations to all of you too. I think you did a great job. But and Commissioner Johnson, I've been with these big boxes before. It's interesting what drives them, and what drove this was I want to say we're by the airport. We're by the airport. It says everything, and that's what they think. Boy, that's going to drive a lot of people there. See, you say, where are you? Well, we're by the airport. So, yeah.
It is going to be a great revitalization of that area. When the Cherryland Mall first went in, sort of development built around there, and then as the Grand Traverse Mall came in, you saw it go away. And first of all, I also congratulate you on sticking with this. I watched the process, and I was hoping that there was a way that we could welcome Costco to our area for much-needed jobs, but a lot of people said, well, why don't they just build at the Cherryland Mall? That's, had some issues, and there was some bankruptcy issues, and the truth is Costco wants their own piece of property where they don't share a parking lot with anybody else, or possibly their own gas station, and that is their company blueprint. And there's nothing wrong with that. So I think there was a lot of confusion as to why don't they just revitalize this other part of the piece of property. But truly what Costco is going to do is just become an addition to revitalize that entire corridor, which is the point. I certainly hope that we look at a traffic study for the 2-lane South Airport Road in front of it, though, and the eventual development that comes into it. But thank you for all you did, because this is a very welcome addition to our community.
Yeah, very good.
All right. Any additional discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Thank you.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Next.
Excuse me.
Establishment of a pension advisory board. Oh, I'm sorry, Bonnie.
There was they separated out the authorization to execute a reciprocal easement and operating agreement. Was that part of Sunny's, okay, good.
Whatever.
I just didn't read the whole paragraph.
I just want to make sure we didn't miss that part.
No, I just didn't read the whole paragraph in aloud. I'm sorry, Bonnie.
All right.
Do we need a roll call vote because of the fact that it says ayes and nays, or because nobody voted nay, you're okay?
I think if you're unanimous, that we're fine, and I'll put all yay.
Well,
if I need a roll call vote, I've got somebody here that'll poke me.
No, we're good.
The resolution specifically lists them individually.
All right, we're good, he says. All right.
Thank you.
Establishment of a pension advisory board.
Madam Chair and fellow commissioners, as we looked at the pension situation and was trying to assess, what took place, it was clear that we lacked transparency, and a lot of decision makers weren't communicating amongst each other. So the intent of this is to have full transparency and communication on the status of our pension at all times. It requires quarterly reports, end-of-the-year reports, of course, additional meetings if they're necessary. The board balances itself out with 2 people representing employees, 2 people representing elected officials, and 3 people representing the community. So it's a nice balance. We looked at other models that were available and thought that this was the best one to bring forward. The other benefits of this are, I would want one of the first action steps is to look at our defined contribution plan. We have an obligation to make sure that individuals are getting the best variety of options from investment, and the organization that we're working with is doing as much one-on-one counseling to help people strategize based on their needs, their age, and things of that nature. We're currently with MERS, but I'd like the group, as one of their first targeted opportunities, is to go out and do a request for proposal from other companies to see what they offer in terms of opportunities for investment, the amount of time they spend with individuals to make sure that we're getting, our people are getting the best possible advice that they can. In addition, it's a recommending body, of course, and as we go through the deliberations of determining what we're going to do with our pension, I think they could be of real value in another set of eyes as we lay things out, giving us some advice and thoughts. If we stayed with MERS, then they would be monitoring that and reporting back and making it transparent. If something happened where it didn't work out with MERS and we had to leave, then we would be coming back to you and asking to move them from a recommending body to a decision-making body, which would then be in charge of managing the pension fund and finding someone to hire to do that, and then take a much more aggressive role. But right now, it's a recommending body as we move through this process. It also allows us, and from a contingency planning perspective, if we do have to leave MERS, we've got an organization set up. It's structured. They've already started working on looking at defined contributions, and we've got some of an organizational structure to go to as compared to having to do all of that at one time. So we hope that you'll see the wisdom in doing this, and staff's recommendation is to approve the pension board.
I would begin by moving to establish a pension advisory board for the purposes of reviewing and monitoring the county's defined benefit and defined contribution retirement plans, and to make appropriate recommendations to the Board of Commissioners.
I'll second it.
All right, moved by me, supported by Dr. Lathrop. Discussion. Commissioner Gropa.
Just a couple of thoughts and a concern on this. First of all, thank you. This is an idea whose time came decades ago. And had we had an advisory board in the year 2000, I truly believe the County Board of Commissioners would have received the information they were supposed to have to make the decisions that they should have made, and we wouldn't be here today. And through no fault of their own, we at least learn by those mistakes and hopefully pass this creation. The concern I have is the makeup of the board. I have expressed this concern to our deputy administrator, and I respectfully ask that we consider the addition of 2 more members of the pension board. I would like to see a current county employee and a retired county employee on the pension board. It's truly advisory in nature. I understand that the board has open meetings. Anyone is welcome to attend. But I think that there is a noticeable lack of communication, whether it's perceived or legitimate, it doesn't even matter. And if we had an employee on the board that could share and be a liaison for employees, perhaps they would feel more comfortable, because they clearly aren't comfortable with speaking to us. I think that a retiree's advice would be priceless. I took the time this week for a couple hours to meet with a former several-decade employee of Grand Traverse County, and I truly enjoyed my time talking to him and learning from him about his time at the county and different things that had happened. I find that advice to be valuable in understanding the misperceptions that we're dealing with now. It would just be something that I think would go a long ways in a gesture to saying that we're all in this together. And I understand that we have 2 employees on here representing employees. However,
That's what I just heard.
both of those people have been in their seats for, our finance director hasn't been in her seat yet, and our deputy administrator has only been here for less than a year. And I think that there may be a perception that there isn't the relationship that would be necessary with the original intent of putting those employees on the board. It's just a thought. But I think that it puts out an olive branch at a time when it is amazingly necessary to let people know that we value the input of everybody. I really appreciate the citizen role on this board. I think that that would be just such a great thing to have. And on top of it, it copies the concept of the Blue Ribbon Panel, which I think was some really valuable advice to our county. And then we would have the employees who are valuable, like Jen and Ms. Lundquist, our new financial our finance director, which I think is an important role, but I don't think it creates the real original idea of this, which is representation of the employees. So it's something to think about on this if we are going to all work together as a team, and I think I've said that probably enough times for people to start wondering, but it's truly how I feel about it. So I would ask that the board consider that very respectfully, and I'm very grateful for the opportunity that the administration brought this forward to even have this board.
Dr. Johnson?
Yeah, I mean, it's like you read my mind, because I echo the same thing. I think we need the employee buy-in on this, make sure the makeup incorporates enough employees there to have the buy-in, because it's theirs. You know, we could make all the decisions in the world and it doesn't affect us. It's their pension. It's a retiree's pension. So I love the idea of a retiree. I didn't even think of that, but make sure the makeup is right on it. And it, you know, by all means, if it has to come back to the board once you start it and we got to readjust, you know, we can be flexible in that way. But I think this is an awesome step. You know, it'll dedicate people solely to this. I mean, we don't have time to spend like we need to for this. This is very important for the employees, the retirees, and the community. And it'd be nice to have a group that can sit here and look at and evaluate things, especially if we were lucky enough to be able to get out of MERS, to where we could have some decision, that board could have decision on what investments. We could actually find out what investments there were. That'd be a shocking revelation.
Where is their money?
That board could determine what is the risk that they want to take for this year and then invest that way. You know, again, when I went down to Fernandina Beach, they had their control over their board did their investments. And they got a 9% return just because they evaluated everything. You know, if you go with, well, I'll stop because I don't want to start talking MERS.
No, there are pension boards elsewhere. Troy, Michigan comes to mind. Pretty much every time you have a pension board, you have a better return on your investment than when you do not have a pension board. Because exactly as you state, first of all, they have an interest, and they have the time, and they are dedicated to return on investment. Do you, Mr. Menzel?
Let me give you the rationale for the way I set it up. My experience has been if boards get too big, they get unwieldy and they don't work very well, first of all. And in public boards, very seldom do you have the opportunity to pick and choose skill sets. Usually you have such a variety. This is not designed to make anyone comfortable. This is designed to have people, treasurer, finance director, the criteria for the people, the volunteers is all finance-based. I want, hopefully, good skill sets that will analyze and give good financial decisions. And for transparency, it's not designed for meeting short-term needs. This is structural change that's designed to improve the quality of decision-making, improving the amount of transparency to all groups. The Board of Commissioners will be getting accurate information. The administration will be getting accurate and timely administration. The employees will be getting timely and accurate administration, and the community will be doing that. So I think it's set up to do that, and that's the objective. And I know there's, because of the situation with the pension, but I don't think you want to overreach. You've got a good nucleus. It's well designed. It represents a lot of people, and it's set based on skill sets of finance, and that's what this needs, because it's a finance board, especially if you go in and manage your own pension. I think that's important. So that's why I did it. So,
Commissioner Crawford.
Where I understand your point about making a board too big or wanting it to be solely focused on the financial aspects, and it might sound weird coming from a financial person, there's people behind those numbers. And the people behind those numbers are the employees. So I think that having employees on there is an awesome suggestion. And I would support Commissioner Kropa's suggestion that employees be part of that, because they are the people behind the numbers. They are the people that the numbers represent. So to eliminate them from the discussions and from the information gathering process, I don't think is a great idea. I think including them is a very good idea.
We are not eliminating employees. We are having,
I said that wrong. Including them is a good idea. I didn't mean eliminate. Including them is a good idea.
our administrator is suggesting that 2 employees, our finance director and our deputy administrator, administrator,
or designee,
be on the board. So we are not eliminating employees. What I'm going to ask the board to do is, let's take a leap of faith and go with what the administrator has recommended. We can change it if we see a need moving forward. I would like to just start with what the administrator has suggested. He's put a lot of time and effort into this. He has researched pension boards. We can add.
Let me just add one thing, if I may, Madam Chair. If we move to managing our own pensions, I have to come back to you anyway and shift it from a recommending body to a decision-making body, and then that would be an opportunity to increase the number if you want. Another option is you could have someone as ex officio.
Our goal right now is, just to make recommendations and transparency for the employees. That's what this board is going to do. That's their sole purpose. Commissioner Wheelock.
I've thought about this quite a bit since I read this packet the first time. I think the idea here is great. I think what I'm seeing in this proposal is, for lack of a better term, a watchdog organization. We annually, for the number of years that I've been here, we always get these actuarial reports and annual reports from MERS. They're not very clear. They're difficult to read. They're difficult to understand. By putting expertise, if you will, in a group that can review that information, review that report, ask the right questions, hopefully we get to better decisions. I'm inclined to think at this particular point, we're probably okay with the recommendation as it was drafted. Now, if we get to a point where we are in fact investing our employee money and having control about how our employees' money is being invested, absolutely I want the employees to have input.
I don't argue that.
But at this point right now, what I need is expertise that can review the information that we're getting from MERS and evaluate what we got, because we can have all kinds of discussion about MERS, and I'm sure we're going to get to that in the next item in the agenda. But the fact is, we need some expertise to help us to evaluate their reports and their evaluations. I've read dozens and dozens of reports, annual reports and actuarials from MERS, and I don't know that I'm stupid, but there's still a lot of items in there that I do not understand, and maybe with a little better expertise we could have better decisions. I'm personally not completely convinced that their annual reports or their actuarials have ever been correct. But we
their actuarials are not correct, but we won't go there.
We absolutely probably have not been asking the right questions.
Dr. Lathrop.
But the right people haven't been there for us to ask those questions either.
Dr. Lathrop.
Well, I'm going to support this. I do appreciate your ideas, and I think that I like to just not second guess my administrator right now. Just follow his lead, and it can always be amended later under different circumstances. I'm glad about it for a couple reasons. It might make MERS behave a little better, and also it will for certain never let what happened to us happen again. We're not going to be caught flat-footed with under-the-table hidden information. And so I think this should help the employees realize that we want this thing to be stable. We want the money to be there when they retire. This is about them. And we want our citizens to have confidence that we're doing this right. So I think this is a wonderful idea.
All right, with that, I'm going to ask for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Next, designation of $5,150,740 for unfunded pension liability. Mr. Menzel.
Yes, sorry?
No,
Oh, well,
Can I make a motion?
yes, you may.
I'd like to make the motion that we designate 500 million, 100.
No.
$5,150,740 for unfunded pension liability.
In a restricted fund.
In a restricted
I want
fund.
that, in a restricted fund.
Yeah. We can't do.
Support.
Yeah.
Moved by Dr. Lathrop, supported by Commissioner Crawford. Discussion. Mr. Menzel.
first of all, Madam Chair, I'd like to thank Dr. Lathrop for the $500 million donation. That would make my life a lot easier, and I could go down there with a lot more credibility. But being that we don't have that much, we're coming close. And I think you had a pretty detailed report which really explains where the money's coming from, why we're doing it. Reserves will be at the 15% per board policy, allowing us to pay down about $5 million. It will go into a designated fund. We're not giving it to MERS. We're putting it in a separate fund that will only be used for pension reduction, cannot be used for anything else. The reason is if we work something out with MERS, and we would probably give that money to them to add to our portfolio. If we don't, then we would probably take money out of MERS and put it in that designated amount and then do our strategic planning, whether we're going to go to insurance companies or whether we're going to manage it ourselves, kind of thing. It also will be helpful when I go down and with the chair and vice chair and deputy administrator to make our presentation. This shows how serious we are, and really we didn't follow through with some things for 3 years that we said we'd do, and this now says we're serious about it. We've made this commitment. We're kind of making up for that, so it gives us a little credibility going down and shows how serious we are. So we have to pay off the debt. This is a way of doing it, and it moves our position from a 45% funded to a 50.5. It just feels good to be over 50%, though we need to go a lot further.
Be 66 out of 66 anymore.
Maybe we could move.
Maybe.
Yeah. There wasn't anybody below 50, but maybe there was somebody else. But anyway, it's going in the right direction. It's making a serious commitment, along with your support of the pension board. Two major structural moves that show that we're really serious about this. So, I think this will help a great deal in our negotiations. In fact, in the meeting that some of us were here with MERS, when I told them that we were planning on moving some funds into a designated fund for a pension pay down, I got a very, very positive reaction from Christy Rose, the CEO of MERS. So we recommend supporting this.
Dr. Lathrop.
I am so excited about this. This lets the community know, it lets our employees know that this board is going to fix this board. And to think that with this one move, we'll be above 50%, that's halfway there. It gives me hope. I sure hope we pass this.
Commissioner Kropa.
I enjoy that optimism. I'm always the grumpy cat of the board. Couple of questions on this. First of all, thank you. I first heard the term secret money, surprise money, hidden money from our previous administrator when I was Parks president, and we had some issues with our budget, and he said, "Oh, don't worry, we have secret money that we can pull from." And that's when I, although with a finance and accounting background, had always done private sector accounting, never knew the magical world of fund accounting at the government level. And so I have always thought that our department heads and our county administration have relied upon these pockets of money to not budget the way that they should. And it's been frustrating for me because in the real world of cost accounting, we budget the way that we should. And so I was frustrated with our fund balance upon doing just literally a 1-minute calculation. I found out that we were at 23%, and our resolution is to be at 15%. And when you do the math, that equated to about a little less than $3.5 million. So here we are having employees make concessions, cutting services, talking about all this stuff, and we had millions of dollars sitting in a fund balance for these secret money acquisitions when department heads don't do their budgets properly. That was frustrating, and I went to the deputy administrator, but you were already on it because you knew exactly what I was talking about. I would like to see us go one step further and somehow by resolution or something, make sure that we just stick at 15%, that we don't find ourselves at a 23 or 24% fund balance again. That is dishonest, it is not transparent, and it is especially harmful to people that are giving up things when they find out we have pockets of money sitting around. So one issue is going to be the budgeting for full staff and issues that we have with fund accounting, and I respect and understand those issues. And I know we are entering into a whole new type of budgeting this year and that sort of thing. Because in the past, we would have a budget, the budget did not balance, and then magically the county board would pass a balanced budget, and we would find out that secret money popped up from a reserve in a fund balance account that was well over the resolution stated amount. I don't know if the resolution as worded right now would place suit or if we need a newly worded resolution, but I don't think it should be a minimum fund balance of 15%. I think it should be a fund balance of 15%. Reserves that could be dipped into at times that are needed, a balance that's required to maintain some sort of fiscal health for us, but not enough that we can ever somehow have $3.35 million of extra money sitting. It's just not the way that this board has said that they want the county to be run. So first of all, this was really appreciated to see that approached by administration. My second concern is where the deappropriation of the $205,000 from the health department came from. Are we going to be seeing any services cut or employee jobs cut?
No.
Okay.
Madam Chair, this does not affect the 2016 budget at all. I could spend another 3 hours going into things that we're finding, and we'll have that in the budget hearings and process, but these are funds that will not impact the service delivery system of any department going forward, and it's money.
And I think that's just important for people
Heidi,
to know.
Heidi explained one of them, the 95,000. So we're
And I would respectfully disagree with your description, Commissioner Kropa, of pockets of money sitting around. We have a $50 million unfunded pension bill.
Exactly. That was
It's like
perception that I was speaking about.
Yes, it's a bill that we owe.
But if you have a department that didn't budget properly and they point to this money,
yes,
it is a pocket of money sitting around, and that's my point.
And there has been a habit over the years of trying to squirrel it away.
I was president of a board of a department that did that. That was how I found out prior to being a county commissioner, that when we didn't budget properly or had an emergency, obviously that's why you have fund balance. But the reliance upon fund balance as a budget balancing tool needs to stop at this county. And it stops when we have our fund balance stay at 15%. Allow those dollars to flow back into the county to be utilized for what they were intended to be utilized for.
Paying our bills.
Exactly. Exactly. And so I just a thought in the future, or maybe in budget year for 2017, the idea of a resolution or just a look into the language of our standing resolution on how our fund balance stays at 15% rather than ballooning to 23% we don't even know where the money comes from.
Well, and I am extraordinarily I'm looking forward to our new finance director's arrival. Commissioner Wheelock.
Well, first, I would be amiss if I didn't mention the fact that in years past, the fund balance that was considered to be normal was in the 20% range. This county board had, for a long time, had a policy that the range was 20%. It was reduced to 18, and then it was reduced to 15. I will support this motion this evening. I had some concerns. I have a concern about the money being pulled from the delinquent tax revolving fund. You know, that is a fund that the other taxing entities in our community depend on, that at the end of the year, when people don't pay their land taxes, Long Lake Township is made whole, the library is made whole, the college is made whole, the school's made whole. Grand Traverse County holds that debt and that receivable. So I'm a little concerned about the money being taken out of the tax revolving fund, because I truly believe there are a number of entities in our community that depend on the county making those payments to them the end of March, the 1st of April. I don't remember, Heidi, exactly what the date is. But those entities do depend on the county making them whole. And that could be a concern. You know, 1.5 million, you know, I don't know, what's our delinquent fund right now? Heidi, number? About 12?
I think we can.
We have about $12 million there right now. And understand, there's provisions by which if we do not have the money, and we went through this probably 4 years ago, we were short of money at the time, and we basically loaned ourselves the money to be able to pay that. And we ran it as a receivable. I don't remember the terminology right now, but we ran it as a receivable that we were going to collect. But we were still able at that point to make the entities whole. There's other communities that have had to go and literally borrow the money from other from banks or bonds in order to make those entities whole. I don't want to get into a situation where we have to borrow money. It's one thing if we can take money out of our general fund to make those payments, but that's why the delinquent tax fund is there. And I want everyone to understand why it is there. The money from the health department, I thank Wendy for finding that. You know, there's many of our departments have fund balances, you know, and we can call it secret money, we can call it anything we want, but there are fund balances. There are budget centers that never expend all of their money. You know, Tom and Jen and I met very early after Jen got here, and I have 500 little sticky notes in last year's budget book. But there's no sense in worrying about last year's budget book. It's a process we need to change moving forward of how we do that. You know, I met with the sheriff, and we talked about the fact that rather than have money at the end of the year where you put it back to the general fund, I would rather have you come see me in November because your gas line item is under and I have to appropriate you more money than have this backwards. We're gonna get back, you know, $500,000 out of the 2015 budget that we didn't expend. Okay, so all of a sudden we weren't $2 million short of having enough money. We were, you know, somewhere around $1 million, $1.5 million short of having enough money. And if we do a better job of budgeting, you know, we will have more realistic numbers.
I believe you and Commissioner Kropa are singing the same song.
Yeah, that too. The other piece, the county treasurer has agreed to transfer proceeds from the tax foreclosure fund. Just a reminder to the board and to the public, in the past, those proceeds have been put into the housing trust fund. That housing trust fund has been used to leverage money from the HUD and grant money. For example, we had about $250,000 that we were able to give the depot project out of the housing trust fund and federal monies to help for affordable housing. If we take that money and we don't put it into the housing trust fund, we use it here, it will not be available for us to leverage next year toward those federal monies for affordable housing. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, I just want you to understand what we have historically used that money for. Like I said, I will support this tonight. I think it's a great thing. The only way, you know, and I appreciate all the people that participated in the last week's meeting with the MERS people. The only way we're going to get MERS to give us any consideration whatsoever of their stance on our investment is if we can give them something. You know,
well, we need to show a good faith effort.
We have not done that. We need to have a carrot of some sort. This may be a rather large carrot. You know, that being said, I absolutely think that it's critical that this be restricted fund. I do not want to turn $5 million over to MERS and say, here, we're good.
Not yet.
Because
Not
under
yet.
and we can get into the discussion at any point. But the fact is, in today's economy, they lost 0.8%. They lost $500,000 of Grand Traverse County money last year. They not only got us no interest that they promised us, they lost us $500,000 of our money. Now, I'm not sure that I would be paying any investment counselor or anyone else to invest my money when they're sitting on $54 million of my money, and they not only didn't get me a dime in interest last year, but they cost me $853,000. That's absurd, and I will support the decision when it comes down to it to move out of MERS. But that being said, they, along with the caveats that are in the Constitution and things, it is going to be very, very difficult for us to get out. I think 3 entities have gotten out and 2 of them were asked to leave. So, it's going to be very difficult for us to get out of MERS, but they absolutely are not fulfilling their portion of the contract.
Aren't you glad we have a pension board now?
Okay.
They can watch.
We are digressing away from the specific topic.
But it's all part of the discussion.
Dr. Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, maybe we should just go down and sit down in front of them for a while. They'll make us leave, maybe. No, I mean, you think about it, we could have put that $5 million in a savings account and do a heck of a lot better than we've got. So, no, I completely support this too. I mean, one of the things I will say, to your comments, Commissioner Wheelock, is, yeah, we have all these entities that we're saving money to use, but we've also have people, retirees and current employees, that are depending also on what we do here to get that money back. The money does us no good if it's just sitting somewhere. If we can use it, and yeah, worst case, if we got to go figure out and get creative on how to fix somebody else's taxes, we can do that. This is such a big hole that we have to do everything. Everything's on the table. I mean, we've said that multiple times, except hybrid plans, but pension bonds, but that's a whole nother issue.
Yes.
I'm done.
All right, Dr. Lathrop.
I want to point out to the public that a number of years ago, this fund was funded at 142%. And now it's withered down to about 43% right now. We're going to put it at above 50%. This is the first board that has done something like this, maybe ever, in Grand Traverse County. It's really cool. We should be proud of ourselves.
And Mr. Menzel.
Just to assure Commissioner Wheelock, this is a designated fund that could not be used for anything but pension reduction. As I mentioned on the pension board issue, the first thing I want the pension board to do is look at the defined contributions and how's that working, because we are now working with MERS on that, and that may be the first exit out if we find another organization that could do a better job for our employees, and that's why I want to do some RFPs and look at some of the other organizations out there as an interim step. So
we definitely have the potential to move defined contribution out of MERS.
That's right. They don't care about that.
That is relatively simple to do. The defined benefit piece that we still have is going to be much more difficult.
All right. Commissioner Coropa.
I just wanted to acknowledge Jen DeHaan for a moment. I had the same concerns about the tax foreclosure funds and contacted her, and it was very clear that a lot of deference was given to why that revolving fund occurs and the kind of dollars that we need in it. And they absolutely would not have put this dollar amount in if there was any concern that it was going to put us into an emergency situation with payback of taxing entities. And it was very easy to understand her explanation, and it was very clear, and that is why I didn't bring it up on top of the other things, but they were well on top of it.
I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Yay. We have no old unfinished business, new business. The government...
I have
Oh, I'm sorry.
Under new business?
I'm going to new business now. Yes.
When you do, I'd like to say something.
Go ahead. I'm under new business.
All right. I'd like to take this opportunity to recognize some businesses who helped us in economic development. Chris Erickson and Gene Dorency, she's gone, and Sarah Adams all are putting together this video on economic development, promoting the area, and the county participated in that. Chris was in the video, Hagerty Insurance, Britton Banners, MAC Update, Munson Hospital, Northwest Michigan College, and TCAPS all participated in this video that we'll be using as an economic development introduction to people who want to know more about the area. And so I just wanted to recognize all those organizations and those three people who helped put it all together. Thank you.
All right. Next, moving on to the governmental air conditioning repair. As we sit here like this.
For the past couple of weeks, we've had some issues with the cooling system here in the government center, and received a phone call on Monday with a request from facilities management to provide administrative approval for the purchase of some equipment to make some repairs to the heat exchanger and condensers that are located in the basement of this facility. The estimated cost for doing this is $60,000. There are funds included and available within another capital improvement purchase where there was savings that was available. The equipment that's being replaced was originally purchased back in 2013. It had a 3-year warranty and recently ran out of warranty. In talking with the contractor today, he explained to me that the failure of the system was not normal and that it exceeded what actually would have been covered under a warranty had we actually fallen within that time period. So there had been concerns about how the system was developed and that it draws in well water, which apparently here has a high iron content, and so that had clogged the system. There was some flushing involved, and unfortunately that process didn't work. And so the systems failed. The new system, to my understanding, when I went down and got an explanation on it, has some additional filtration processes that are included that will ensure that that doesn't happen again and that iron content does not cause the damage. I will offer one additional thing that is a concern, is that we do not know if there is additional damage to the cooling system. We will find that out when these 2 parts, or 4 parts rather, are actually replaced and we are able to turn them on. And those other compressors may come at an additional cost.
Do you need any kind of approval from us, or?
It's a resolution. I do need approval because we considered this an emergency
All right,
purchase.
is there a motion, please? From anyone?
So moved.
Moved by Dr. Johnson. Is there support? I'll support. Discussion.
But you'll notice in the resolution from 2013, it says that they accepted the lowest bid. I just wanted to point that out. It's a really common, thing when you have catastrophic failures. And it also says that we received these May 30th, 2013, so I would point out we were just a few weeks past, of course, the warranty. There's a lot of concern about this kind of expense. But my question would be, since the government center is split with the city of Traverse City, where's the cost and how is that separated between the 2 entities?
I did speak with the city manager today and notified him that we would be sending him an invoice for approximately $16,000 for the repairs. That's under our joint operating agreement for this facility. It is covered.
Okay, so of the 60 we're allocating, we will be reimbursed 16?
Yes,
correct.
Dr. Johnson?
If you keep the air off for another month, you might get more out of them, just no, I mean, it's appalling, too, that 3 years, I mean, no one would accept that.
It's a $254,000 piece of equipment that failed 2 weeks after the warranty expired.
There's got to be more to this. I mean,
Well, it wasn't properly maintained.
There wasn't Sharon Plumbing.
what was maintenance done on it? I mean, is there any annual maintenance or anything like that?
I think the administration is looking into it, and if you've got any questions, I think that you can just take them
'Cause like I
directly
said,
to the administrator.
I could see it if I installed it or something. Not for a professional.
So could I. So could I, Bob.
County board doing maintenance.
All right.
Well, I think it's important to note that, yes, it was the lowest bidder, but they were a very reputable company. They were a local vendor, and they were quoting, a well-named brand of
If any
equipment.
of you have any specific questions, I would encourage you to speak with the administrator outside of the board meeting. With that, I'm going to call for a vote. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Opposed, same. Motion carries. Commissioner reports. Oh, I'm sorry, second opportunity for public comment. Public comment?
Looks like the sheriff's moving. Is he going to talk? Nope, he's packing up his stuff.
All right. Seeing no one rush to the podium, Commissioner reports.
I have one.
Yes, so do I. Go ahead. You and I may have the same report.
I don't think so. You weren't at this. I went to the Venture North annual meeting yesterday. Venture North is the funding arm of Traverse Connect, Doug Luciani's group affiliated with the chamber. As many of you know, I have a really large interest in economic development here at the county, and what Tom has been working on has been great. But I wanted to point out we had this keynote speaker there who has written this really great book, and the group is Michigan Business Group, and it's a blueprint for economic development in your community. And the goal is, in 2009, the state of Michigan was in the bottom 10 state for job growth and per capita income, and they want us to be a top 10 state by 2020. Anyways, it was just interesting. They were talking about the top 4 challenges to job growth and income growth in your community in Michigan. They're in no specific order. The first one is Michigan business costs have improved, but job creation and business attraction tools are lacking. Mainly, we have the corporate income tax in Michigan. We're one of very few states that have that. Then it discussed harnessing Michigan's innovative strengths to grow jobs in key areas. And they talked a lot about R&D and how Michigan is really heading towards being a top R&D state. Then we talked about Michigan ranks 31st out of 50 states for education in the workforce. We have an education issue from elementary school all the way up to that, and that there's initiatives at the state level to do a Pure Michigan type campaign for our state universities. Our state universities rank in the bottom 4% of bringing in outside students. But the one I was interested in is debt, unfunded liabilities threaten fiscal stability. They find the #1 block to economic development growth is local government debt. They talked about state debt. For every citizen in the state of Michigan, they carry over $5,000 worth of OPEB and pension debt for the state employees. I did the math, and in Grand Traverse County, we can add $667 a person for our county OPEB and pension issues. When you throw all of that together, Michigan is in the bottom 10% of the states for pension and retiree health care debt. If you can't solve these things, it is impossible to reinvest in your community. And it was a very interesting thing, and I have all the information if anybody's interested.
Every dollar that is directed towards debt service does not go for public service.
That was exactly their point. It cuts services, it hurts our employees, and ultimately, it ruins the economic development of the whole community.
I greatly appreciate this board unanimously
I thought it
finally starting to pay our bills. I do have a commissioner report. It was reported at Garfield Tuesday night that Grand Traverse Mall has once again filed for property tax reduction. So I wanted to let you all know that. All righty. Commissioner Wheelock.
A couple things. Attended the Long Lake Township's meeting last night. They held their public hearing for their 2016-17 budget. Their budget year is July 1 through June 30th. No real big surprises in the budget. As you all are aware, the fire department is no longer a part of rural division, and that seems to be going very well. They approved last week at a special meeting the purchase of another piece of fire apparatus, so that's moving along. Long Lake Township is in receipt of a $160,000 waterways grant to be used for the enhancement of the Crescent Shores boat launch. That along with about $400,000 of Long Lake Township pledged park money will go for the enhancement of the boat launch itself, the creation of a parking lot on Crescent Shores Road, and a cooperative venture with the Road Commission to improve Crescent Shores Road in itself, which Jim and I both know is in very, very sad shape. So excited to see this grant money come available to us, and I think the benefits to the community are going to be huge.
Anyone else?
I have one thing.
Yes.
Building on Commissioner Wheelock's comments, I was at the Long Lake Association meeting last Monday and heard the new fire chief talk, and he was quite impressive. He seemed to be very knowledgeable, and everyone was impressed with his explanation of what he was going to do. And I'd also like to thank the board for supporting these two important resolutions tonight. Thank you.
All right.
I have one last thing.
Yes, ma'am. Commissioner Grova.
I forgot Brownfield update. Many of you are aware of the 9-story building downtown, and the city commission approved it, but then a group of citizens fought it, and Judge Rogers accepted their fight and said they had some points and kicked it back to the city, and the city commission needed to do some more due diligence. And in the meantime, the developers of the project appealed Judge Rogers' decision, and that is going obviously to the Circuit Court of Appeals. And so then the citizens group filed for I think a summary withdrawal. And that was, or no, the developers applied for it to be withdrawn. And long story short, it ended up being held up, and it's going to the Court of Appeals, and that could be a process of anywhere from 1.5 years to 2 years. What people don't know is that the Brownfield Authority, which is heavily involved in that project, has several other projects that have been approved and moving forward, and funders in and everything going, and they have all gotten cold feet because of the way that the wording was in Judge Rogers' decision. It allows for a broader scope to be defined in his words that could apply to funding for other projects. And anyways, they got some cold feet. So the developers of this project are hoping to apply for, I'm not going to know the right words, but I know you do, to have it expedited in the appeals court so that regardless of what their decision is, that we get the decision now. Grandview Marketplace is on hold, Park Place is on hold. There's one other one that's on hold, all pending the Court of Appeals decision on this. And the truth is, in Brownfield, we haven't met on much of anything except for the parking lot structure on the west side up front, because that's how many projects in this county that are job creators and revenue creators are waiting on this decision. So I just wanted to let you know. Chris probably knows a lot more about it, but
Immediate consideration and peremptory reversal.
Peremptory reversal, thank you.
Don't ask Carrie, she'll bill you.
It's been a long time since college. I am on my own, not representative of this board, going to write a letter to the Circuit Court of Appeals asking them to move a little more expeditiously on their decision.
Move along sprightly.
There are many projects that are awaiting this. It's not just about the Pine Street development, it's about multiple projects. But many of you were probably waiting to hear about some of these projects because they were literally on the green light, and we're not going to hear anything until this judgment comes in.
All right. Any other notices? Looking both ways here. We do not have a closed session required. We are adjourned. Thank you all.
Good seeing you, Tom.